Go.
She took off her wig, her false teeth, her glass eye. She thought it strange to look on my face. I wanted to hug her and squeeze her and love her, but she was scattered all over the place. Now this little doggerel goes to show you that poetry is in the ear of the one listening to it. Cowboy poetry is what I'm specifically talking about today. Cowboy poetry. Cowboy poetry has moved from the campfires all the way to the conventions, to the stages, and even to the Tonight Show. It's a well-received form of poetry now today. It started back in the 1800s around the campfires and cook stoves and bunkhouses of cowboy ranch camps. What would happen is people would come in after a hard day's working. They'd entertain themselves by telling tall tales and reciting poems. Many of them humorous, many of the times they were sad and melancholy. The cowboys generally used poetry to do it, words that rhymed, because most cowboys were illiterate. And as illiterate cowboys, it was easier to remember a story that rhymed than it was to remember stories that didn't rhyme. And so that's how the cowboy poetry began. And we have lots of examples of cowboy poetry from that period. Songs like The Old Chisholm Trail, and Come-a-tie-yi, Yippee-yi-yay, Yippee-yi-yay, and Tying Knots in the Devil's Tale. These are all examples of early cowboy poetry. Now, we'll flash forward to a few years. Up in the 70s, cowboy poetry began a gathering in Elko, Nevada. And in Elko, Nevada had the first Cowboy Poets gathering, and there you had guys like Waddy Mitchell and Baxter Black who would come in and they would compete in cowboy poetry, and they'd have a weekend-long festival celebrating all things Western. And so what you would have is you'd have great cowboy poets coming in that would tell poems, and these are poems that would have some certain typical themes, and themes are like ranch work and the ones that perform ranch work. The Western lifestyle would be another theme of cowboy poetry. Landscapes of the American and the Canadian West. Cowboy values and practices are found in cowboy poetry. Humorous anecdotes are always a favorite of cowboy poetry, usually with some sarcasm thrown in the end of it. There's always a good hook at the end of the story. Like in the poem that I recited, the hook was that the girl had all her stuff, she was scattered all over the place, and it was hard to hug her and squeeze her because she was not in one place. Memories of times and people long ago, and sarcasm regarding modern contraptions and the modern ways we do things. There's a famous poem by a guy named Bob Siskadoon, who's a best-selling poet today. He's written numerous volumes of poetry and books, and he's also a regular at campfires and poetry gatherings and performing. He made CDs and stuff like that. It's called The Old Time Christmas. And he starts off with remembering the way things used to be. He says, "I like the way we used to do when cattle was plenty and folks was few." And this is an illustration of the kind of thing that cowboy poetry would do. See, cowboy poetry, even though it deals with those folks that work with livestock and live in the cowboy ways, it's not just exclusive to cowboys. You'll find cowboy poets among the university staff of English professors, and sometimes paleontologists, and occasionally a veterinarian who's a cowboy poet. Housewives are cowboy poets. Cowboy poetry is just a celebration of the Western lifestyle. So anyone that loves the Western lifestyle is welcome to be participating in it. It's also open to people that are not traditionally part of that lifestyle. Cowboy poetry is found in books and CDs, its own websites. A very popular website is www.cowboypoetry.com, and on that website you can find not only a list of cowboy poems, but links to other cowboy poetry sites, and you can also find a little bit of the history of cowboy poetry. The Elko, Nevada Cowboy Gathering will be January 23rd through 26th of this year. It's the biggest cowboy gathering, it's the largest cowboy gathering, but it's not the only one. There are cowboy gatherings all over the world and in every state, and everyone is welcome to go there. All you have to have is a good open heart for those things Western, and that's all it takes to love and enjoy cowboy poetry.